Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let FinTech Grow. I'm Ian Horn. I'm joining you from Money20 today, where I used to work. It feels a bit surreal going back, but what a show it's been. It's real fun. I'm joined by one of my favorite people in the industry, Laura Gibson-Lamothe from Atlanta FinTech. That is correct, right?
That is perfect.
Perfect. What I have forgotten, however, Laura, because I know you, is your job title. What are
Yeah.
you going by these days?
Executive Director, Georgia FinTech Academy.
Okay, love that.
It's got a nice ring to it.
Great, good. Well, let's talk about the show. How are you finding it? How's things?
Well, it's so funny you mentioned, your connection to this event.
Yeah.
And it's been our, I guess, 1 year anniversary since I've seen you last at this event. For me, coming from the US, Georgia specifically, it's been a whirlwind. Obviously, you deal with jet lag, you deal with all the time schedule changes and just the chaos of being at a major event like this.
Yeah.
So many people, the community, the culture of this event has just been really refreshing.
Yeah.
I think it differs from a lot of other event platforms in the way that people are just that much more engaging and open for connection. So I never have that door closed in my face. So I love being here, especially because I carry with me just the consideration for future talent and the next generation. It's part of my role. My day job is focused on that. But I come here looking for insights, industry innovations where the industry is thinking talent and the growing demand for talent is really needed, so that I can inform our curriculum, inform our programming, and provide students more access and exposure to all the unique pathways that exist in the industry. So that's part of the reason why I'm here, and I have been living it up.
You sort of answered my next question, but I'm going to do it anyway,
Yeah.
which is obviously this is a long way from home. So what keeps bringing you back?
Yeah. This event keeps bringing me back. First of all, I love this event versus the other Vegas event.
Yeah.
To be honest, I feel like the food is different, the people are different, the types of variety of companies and businesses you see here is also different. We have a lot of announcements that have been made over the past 2 days from the Money20 Europe platform. And I feel like I've been staying ahead of the curve, being able to get some of that real fresh, relevant content here from the stage where people are amplifying those messages. And you can't really get that everywhere. And so I really, truly appreciate that. I also am coming here as press this year. I got a press pass.
Yeah.
And so I am milking it for all it's worth. I really am. I am having my own sessions. I'm doing podcasts. I'm doing, social media. And this is a real opportunity for me to not only learn and develop myself, but then also, provide relevant content to our students and to our broad community, which consists of people who are mentoring, giving back, volunteering, speaking with our students, sharing about how they're applying what they're learning in the classroom into the roles that they're in the industry. And so it's definitely really helpful to have access to that type of variety of experienced professionals here at this event.
For sure. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, let's talk about the actual themes of this year's show as well, because there's lots of talk around things like agentic commerce, AI, everything, stable coins, even some open banking. There's fraud. I mean, fraud's a massive topic too. For you, what's the most interesting thing that you're hearing about?
Yeah, I would say AI. We've been talking about agentic, and what that means for a lot of our students. We've started off focused on risk and fraud management, leveraging AI and machine learning years ago, and now it's evolved to so many different use cases. But I'm loving, just getting insight and access to the companies that are using it, not only for their internal operations, but to help better and improve the solutions that they're offering to customers. So I think kind of thinking about all of these, varied use cases where AI is being applied has kind of broadened that view of when we say AI, it's not just one thing. It's becoming a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But then there's also the risk implications. And so I'm hearing a lot of people talk about that. And really focused on how does that translate into roles and opportunities for students? Because now it's like this particular solution, functionality, capability didn't exist. And now you're building a core set of discipline around that to make sure operationally you've covered risk and operations and, technology implementation and all of those, facets that really are required. So I've been really enjoying having those conversations with the leaders that I've met with this far, I mean, I had 6 meetings yesterday for my podcast, and the conversation is not only what are you doing within your organization, but it's also how does this, downstream input provide, some access and opportunity for next generation of talent. So bringing those two pieces together has been really rewarding.
Yeah. You mentioned the students and like taking lessons from Europe and bringing them back home. Which things in particular do you think are most relevant to your market in Georgia?
Yeah, I think again, I feel like I'm being repetitive with the AI thing.
Yeah.
I think there's almost two sides of the coin. You have some folks that are very pessimistic about AI, and to be honest, this younger generation sees and hears all of this negative news around AI replacing jobs, and there being no more entry level positions for students. And one thing I'm taking away from a lot of the conversations I had with senior leaders at many different organizations is that it's creating new pathways, it's creating new opportunities, it's allowing really for some junior people to delegate earlier than they would have ever. So some of the things, the tasks that I had to do to get clearance and to start my journey in this industry are no longer necessary, and it allows opportunities for people to really add value day one versus doing some of the grunt work and some of the things that to be honest, I didn't really enjoy. It didn't really feed me. It didn't really grow me in a meaningful way. But I think there's a balance there that we're still trying to figure out as an industry.
Yeah.
I do. But I think there's also in that moment of uncertainty, it opens up so many opportunities, not only from a startup entrepreneurship perspective. I could go on and on about this.
I completely hear that. And actually, a lot of the business leaders I speak to say the same thing. The mistake is to look at AI from the lens of cost cutting initially. I mean, yes, it does help you cut costs, sure. But if you look at it like you're saying in terms of growth, how you expand things, give people more opportunity, then surely that's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Inspires growth, doesn't lead to them job cuts, makes people's jobs more interesting, and all that kind of good stuff. But I'm glad that's what you're taking from Europe because, I think there are stereotypes about Europe, if you're looking at AI and how we're treating it, give it a few years, we'll regulate it even more heavily. We'll give AI a 4-day work week, we'll tell it should unionize, and before you know it, according to ChatGPT, you get together and no one can afford them anymore. But that's Europe, we do our best. But let's look at it the other way around, which is what do you think we can learn from you? Like, what can Atlanta and Georgia teach Europe?
Yeah. It's fascinating that you asked that question because I am constantly comparing. One of the things I didn't mention when you asked earlier about what do I see, value coming out of this event and being in Europe is the fact that, payments has moved at a different pace abroad than it has domestically in the States. And there are so many lessons learned and so many newer capabilities that are being leveraged here that we can learn from and adopt. And there's a sharing, I think, transatlantically that has happened and has been facilitated, especially from the Atlanta ecosystem. Atlanta, Georgia is a fintech hub, which because you already saw me speak about this last year's Money20. Yeah, I got the ATL hat.
Yeah.
But we're a major, fintech ecosystem in the States. 70% of US based transactions routed through Atlanta and through Georgia. And because of that, we have some of the most dominant payment players in the business in the state, which means you have access to so much centralized talent. 260 fintech companies, the likes of, Global Payments, WorldPay, FIS, Deluxe, Income, the list goes on and on. But what that has created is this, talent pool of 55,000 plus experienced professionals. And I'm bringing in and ushering in next generation into that population where it's like this cycle of mentorship and coaching and experiential learning and all of those elements that really help feed and develop a young person trying to navigate their career. And so I think one of the things that long story short, to get to your question about what can people learn is, just that model of pipeline development. We've tested it and we've developed it and we've been successful over, now since 2019, 13,000 students have come out of our, institutions that we support and into fintech and payment jobs. And now we're seeing retention and we're seeing flourishing and success stories coming out on the other end. And so this model of being able to tap into not only the innovation and the creativity that come out of the ecosystem, but it's also the people and the skills and the skills development and the talent.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think this might be a LinkedIn hazy memory, but I've seen you have some communication with Georgia Europe.
Yeah.
Right. Tell us about that, because that's quite amusing, right?
Oh my gosh. I read an article literally last week. It was an announcement that Georgia, the country, is developing stablecoin. And I immediately thought of all of the work that a lot of my friends at organizations like the FinTech Accord and some others that are there in Atlanta. FinTech Atlanta is another organization as well. We've been really focused on stablecoin. A lot of conversations have been had all the way at the Capitol in DC, and then also local government, discussing this, how we can support our organizations like Pfizer and others that are also, dealing and operating within the stablecoin space. But to hear that announcement from Georgia, I was like, well, we're also doing some stuff in the other Georgia, which, by the way, I also get asked all the time. You don't look like you're from Georgia. You don't sound like you're from Georgia. And I'm carrying the Georgia FinTech Academy, brand on me. And so I thought, tale of two cities. Why not kind of like, think about the complexity that both, geographies are navigating in this space, given we went so quickly from theory, I think, and then now we're talking about applicability and implementation. Like, it's a real thing now, I think. Given the Genius Act and some other things that happen in the States, I think it's become a more relevant and really expected conversation on a mini platform. So that was the intent of doing the Tale of Two Georgias. But I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Well, one last thing. So this event well. You've been several times now, and you've been to the other events that Money20 has.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who's coming here for the first time, or someone who maybe hasn't made the most of it in previous occasions?
Oh my gosh.
How should people really get value from this?
I love this question because I feel like I'm a veteran now. I got so many gray hairs. Most of them are covered up now, but I have so many gray hairs to prove it. I think, thinking back to my first Money 2020, I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, as we like to say in the South, like, bless my heart, I came in guns a-blazing, but not really. But I was just like, let me, get the most out of this event. And I analyzed every aspect of it. I wanted 150 connections. You know what I mean? I wanted 600 leads, something ridiculous. But I had all these stats. I had spreadsheets. I had all of what I had captured for myself, ROI for me coming to the event. And I think it's overkill, and it could be very defeating and very draining emotionally to approach a big stimulating event like this in that way. So I recommend, like, do your due diligence, make those connections by putting in that extra effort to do research on both sides so that you can have a fruitful, beneficial conversation when you have a connections in the connections lounge. Then also look at the agenda, make sure you're identifying those panels. For me, I have friends on different stages. So I want to make sure I get to support them and I get to hear what they're, sharing from a thought leadership perspective. And so I develop an itinerary for those, critical ones. Then also plan space to breathe and to relax and to have conversations like we did in passing. Like, it's nice to catch up. You're going to meet so many people and see people that are acquaintances and friends. And leveraging the opportunity to reconnect in that way is important. So I try to keep that in mind because I'm so highly motivated. I'm so data driven by the numbers and by the production that I'm trying to create as an outcome to this event. But at the end of the day, I think, sitting back, allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to kind of let it breathe and enjoy the event for what it is also a balancing act, but it's definitely necessary.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
And let's leave it there. Once again, the bin man has joined us. I think every episode I've done,
I know.
I've had the bin man.
I didn't even know that.
It's not an episode of LFG in Amsterdam without the bin man. I should just move the camera or move the tripod or something simple, but I've chosen not to. Here we are. Laura, you've been a great interview, as always. Great to speak with you.
Thank you
for joining.
Much.
And thank you to everyone who has listened in.
Raising funds, speaking to Claude, drinking coffee and fighting fraud. LFG.